A quick like and subscribe really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you for your support.
In the faded warmth of my childhood home, I can still smell the lingering aroma of my mother's chicken pot pie wafting through the air, a scent that once brought comfort but now feels tainted with betrayal. The walls, once painted a cheerful yellow, have dulled over the years, much like the hope I held for justice. It's strange how a house can hold memories so tightly, yet feel so empty when it matters most. I stand in the living room, glancing at the old family photos lined up on the mantelpiece. Each frame captures moments of laughter and light, but the absence of my sister, Mia, hangs in the air like a thick fog. She was my best friend, my confidant, a vibrant spirit whose laughter could fill this space with joy even on the darkest days. But now, the silence is a constant reminder of how cruel the world can be, especially to those who deserve it the least. 4 months ago, everything fell apart. I remember that day vividly, the sun setting in shades of red and orange outside while I was on my way to meet Mia. She was supposed to be waiting for me at her favorite cafe, the one with the mismatched furniture and the best cinnamon rolls in town. But instead, she was inside the emergency room, her face a mask of pain, her spirit dimmed by the betrayal of someone she once called a friend. Enter Jake. Charismatic, intelligent, and charming, he swept into Mia's life like a summer breeze, igniting a spark of happiness that had been absent for too long. But beneath his handsome exterior lurked a darkness that would soon unravel everything. I couldn't see it then, and neither could she. It's funny how the heart can blind you to danger when you crave love and acceptance, isn't it? That day, as I rushed through the sterile hallways of the hospital, my heart pounding with dread, I could never have imagined the extent of Jake's betrayal. Mia lay in that bed, her bright eyes clouded with confusion and pain. The doctors had done their best to explain, but I couldn't process the words. My mind was screaming, how could someone do this? As I stood beside her, holding her hand while she whispered about dreams that now felt so far away, a swell of anger unfurled within me. It was foreign yet familiar, a feeling I hadn't felt since the time I stood up to a bully in middle school. Only this time, the stakes were far higher, and the enemy much closer. I could only think of one thing: Jake had to pay for what he had done. Days turned into weeks, and the pain morphed into a relentless fire that fueled my every waking moment. I knew I had to find a way to make it right, no matter what it took. I wasn't going to seek vengeance in the childish way that we often fantasize about. This was about justice. Legal justice. The kind that cuts deep and leaves scars that last a lifetime. So, here I am, standing at the precipice of a plan that can only bring me closer to the truth. There's a fine line between revenge and justice, and I'm prepared to walk it, no matter the cost. The taste of retribution is bittersweet, but I can already feel the thrill of the chase, Mia's voice, a soft whisper in the back of my mind, urging me to be strong. It's time to unleash the storm that's been brewing within me, and I can't shake the feeling that it's just the beginning. What I'm about to embark on is a journey of emotional turmoil and a quest for retribution that will test not only my resolve but my very soul. The initial shock of Mia's injury dulled over time, but the ache of betrayal grew sharper. Jake had manipulated her, twisted her trust until it snapped under the weight of his lies. He had convinced her, oh so softly, that the world was only ever going to be a beautiful place filled with endless possibilities. But his idea of a beautiful world turned out to be a nightmare, one that involved deceit and betrayal so heinous it ripped through Mia's life like a jagged knife. It was a Monday when Mia finally found the courage to tell me the truth. We were sitting on her bed, the sunlight filtering through the half-closed curtains, casting soft shadows that danced across her face. She had been quiet for a while, her gaze fixed on a spot on the floor as if it held the answers to all her questions. My heart raced as I sensed the weight of her words hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. I thought he loved me, she said, her voice trembled, breaking into a million pieces. But he was using me, all along. I could see the flicker of disbelief in her eyes, as though she were still trying to reconcile the love she had felt with the pain of betrayal. Using you. How? What do you mean? I asked, every word laced with desperation. The room felt like it was closing in around us, the walls echoing our growing horror. He wanted my dad's connections, she confessed, her hands trembling. He needed money for his startup, and I was just an easy target. He thought I wouldn't find out. The tears streamed down her cheeks, each drop a testament to her shattered trust. In that moment, my heart hardened. A primal surge of anger replaced the sorrow. How could someone who once seemed so genuine turn out to be a monster? I felt rage bubbling up inside me, a visceral reaction to this betrayal that had stolen Mia's spirit and threatened to extinguish her light forever. But it wasn't just the betrayal that ignited the fire within me, it was the calculated coldness with which Jake had operated. He had set a trap, one that had ensnared not only Mia but her entire world. She was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered dreams, while he strutted around town as if he were the king of it all. The more I learned, the deeper my anger sank. I discovered that Jake had already begun to weave his deceitful web with others, his charm disarming them just as it had Mia. I felt sick to my stomach knowing that he had moved on, leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty promises in his wake. How many others had he hurt? How many lives had he destroyed with his lies? I spent hours poring over legal documents, researching the murky waters of defamation and personal injury. I was determined to turn his betrayal into a courtroom drama, an expose of his true nature. I would reveal the man behind the mask, the manipulator hiding in plain sight. I imagined the moment when he would be called to account for his actions, stripped of his charm, and ordered to face the consequences of his deceit. But with each step forward, the emotional armor I tried to don felt increasingly fragile. What if I couldn't prove his guilt? What if Mia's pain was all for nothing? The specter of doubt loomed large, contrasting with the righteous indignation that coursed through my veins. And then, in the quiet moments of the night, I found myself pacing the dimly lit living room of our childhood home, the familiar shadows growing heavier with each step. I replayed the harrowing details of Mia's situation over and over in my mind, feeling like a helpless bystander in her tragedy. Each time I thought I had a grip on my emotions, another wave of anger threatened to drown me. Then came the day it escalated beyond what I could have imagined. As I sat at my laptop, drafting emails to potential witnesses who could testify about Jake's manipulative nature, my phone buzzed with a notification. I opened Instagram only to be met with a picture of Jake, beaming as he posed with friends at a local bar. The caption read, "Living my best life. #blessed. My heart sank, and it felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. The sheer audacity of it all sent my blood boiling. I wanted to scream. How could he carry on as if nothing had happened? How could he flaunt his happiness while Mia suffered in silence? My fingers flew across the keyboard, composing a direct message, but I paused before hitting send. Would it even matter? Would he feel a shred of guilt, or would he just laugh at my rage? The doubt gnawed at me like a persistent rat, and in that moment, I felt utterly isolated. The following week, I attended a support group for victims of emotional abuse, hoping to find solace in shared experiences. As I listened to the stories of others, I felt a strange mixture of empathy and fury. Each story mirrored Mia's to some extent, and I found myself becoming a silent warrior fueled by the pain of others. Yet, when it was my turn to share, I felt the weight of my own experience constricting my throat. I could hardly speak, my voice trembling as I recounted Mia's betrayal and the darkness it had cast over our lives. But as I shared, I caught sight of Jake standing just outside the window, casually leaning against a car, an amused smile plastered across his face. I stumbled over my words, my heart racing as humiliation washed over me. How could he just show up there, watching me like some twisted voyeur? My trust in the support group shattered in that instant. Did they know he was there? Were they judging me? That night, I lay in bed replaying the scene in my mind, feeling more vulnerable than ever. It felt like Jake had not only betrayed Mia but had turned me into a puppet, pulling my strings while I danced to his sadistic tune. The sense of isolation was suffocating, and I began to withdraw from friends who sensed my mounting anger. "You're becoming obsessed," they'd say with concerned frowns. "It's not healthy. You need to let it go." But how could I? Then came the moment that shifted everything into overdrive, the email that would set my plan in motion. I had finally connected with a lawyer who specialized in defamation cases, someone who had a reputation for taking down powerful people. I felt a tingle of hope as I drafted my initial message. I was ready to pursue this, to take it all the way. I pressed send, feeling a rush of adrenaline course through me. But within days of that email, the consequences of my actions bore down harder than I could have imagined. Jake retaliated swiftly. I received a cease and desist letter in the mail, claiming that I was spreading libelous statements about him. It was like a punch to the gut. I had done nothing wrong, and yet I felt the walls closing in around me. His power, his reach was suffocating. For a moment, I felt like I had stepped into a David versus Goliath story, and I was the underdog facing a giant with an arsenal of legal weaponry. As I read the letter, my blood ran cold. It was meticulously worded, each line designed to instill fear, laden with accusations that twisted my intentions into something sinister. The heaviness of it weighed on my chest, and for the first time, I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. Had I just unwittingly unleashed a monster that would claw its way back to me? But then I thought of Mia, of her tear-streaked face in that hospital bed, the worry in her eyes as she shared the details of her heartache. I thought of how much she had lost, how her laughter had been silenced by this man. I thought of the way Jake had tried to snuff out her spirit and how he felt untouchable, operating in the shadows, while her dreams rotted under the weight of his betrayal. The final straw came when I saw Mia again a few days later, this time in her own home. She was trying to put on a brave face, but I could see through her facade. She had started therapy, but it was clear it would take time to heal. As she spoke about her progress, her voice trembled. "I just want to be myself again," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. And it hit me like a freight train. I realized in that moment that it wasn't just about revenge, it was about giving Mia her life back. I could feel the weight of my anger morphing into something more profound, a sense of purpose. I glanced around her room, the cheerful decorations a stark contrast to the sadness that enveloped her. I was no longer merely a bystander, I was stepping into the role of an avenger. That night, I couldn't sleep. I found myself awake, pacing the floor as the darkness closed in around me. Each step was a drumbeat, matching the rhythm of my racing heart. The letters, threats, and consequences swirled in my mind, but they no longer terrified me. They ignited a fire within me, blazing bright and fierce. I sat at my desk, grabbing a pen and paper, scribbling down plans for evidence collection, strategic conversations to have, and potential allies I could reach out to. My mind raced with possibilities, and the fear that had taken root began to dissolve, replaced with the intoxicating thrill of taking back control. I mapped out a timeline, drawing connections between Jake's prior partnerships, discovering a host of people he had duped before Mia, others who might be willing to join me in this fight. I became a detective in my own right, gathering information as if I were piecing together a puzzle that had been scattered across the floor. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror, staring into my own eyes, and feeling an odd mix of fear and exhilaration. I was no longer just a brother looking for justice, I was becoming a force to be reckoned with. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. "You will do this." The moment solidified my resolve. I wasn't just doing this for Mia, I was doing it for every person Jake had ever hurt. I was going to ensure that he would no longer be able to slide through life unscathed, protected by his charm and wealth. The time had come to expose him, to strip away the facade he wore like armor. As I walked back into the living room, Filled with the echoes of memories, I felt a sense of purpose settle in my gut. The plan began to take shape, intricately woven like a tapestry of revenge, justice, and hope. It would be executed with precision and patience, each step designed to slowly but surely unravel Jake's web of lies. Revenge plan. Step by step I would start by collecting every piece of evidence I could find that showcased Jake's manipulative behavior. I created a timeline, marking key events when Mia had mentioned his questionable actions. I began to reach out to mutual friends and acquaintances, people who might have witnessed Jake's behavior or heard whispers of his deceit. Jake was charismatic and well-liked. Some people might hesitate to believe the worst about him, while others might be too intimidated to speak out against him. Through my research, I discovered a few individuals who had been wronged by him, friends of friends who had shared their stories in hushed conversations. I reached out, cautiously at first, framing it as a simple gathering to share experiences. Over coffee and pastries, we pieced together how Jake had manipulated and betrayed each one of us. Trust among us was fragile. Some were still reeling from their experiences and reluctant to engage in any sort of confrontation with Jake. It would take time to build rapport and establish a sense of unity. I needed to bring in someone with experience, someone who could help navigate the legal waters. I sent my research to a law firm specializing in personal injury and defamation cases, highlighting the connections between Jake's actions and Mia's emotional distress. I met with a lawyer who understood the psychological aspects of our case and assured me that we could build a compelling narrative. Securing a lawyer willing to take on the case without initial proof could be challenging. I would have to convince them of the merit of our claims and the potential for a successful lawsuit. I began to keep meticulous records, email exchanges, text messages, and social media posts that could prove Jake's manipulations. I even created a shared Google Drive with the coalition's evidence, where each member could upload their findings securely. Every little piece of information gathered would contribute to building a stronger case against him. Jake could easily delete his messages or deny them. The ephemeral nature of digital communication posed a significant challenge, but I would ensure that everything was backed up and saved. As I gathered more dirt on Jake, I started crafting a narrative that would expose him without directly implicating myself initially. I began posting subtle hints on social media, anonymously at first, about someone who pretends to be perfect but is far from it. This would pique curiosity and potentially get people talking about Jake without naming him. The risk of Jake discovering my plans was high. If he caught wind of my intentions too early, he could retaliate, pulling strings to manipulate the narrative in his favor. Once I felt confident with evidence and coalition support, I orchestrated an encounter where I would confront Jake, with witnesses present. I rented a small room at a cafe under the guise of organizing a reunion for friends. As people arrived, I made sure to invite those who had shared their stories. Once Jake walked in, I planned to present the evidence in front of the assembled group, the air thick with tension and anticipation. The day had arrived. I could barely contain the adrenaline pulsing through my veins as I stood in the back of the cafe, watching the door. Friends had gathered, some curious, others eager to support. They didn't know the details yet, but they would soon witness the unfolding of a dramatic confrontation that would pierce the very heart of deceit. When Jake finally strolled in, radiating his usual charm, he seemed oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. His smile was infectious, a mask that betrayed nothing of the darkness lurking within. I clenched my fists, the mere sight of him making my stomach churn. He greeted everyone casually, dropping jokes and smiles like confetti, completely unaware of the reckoning that awaited him. As the group settled, I caught Mia's anxious gaze across the room. She had agreed to be here, but I could see the trepidation in her eyes. I remembered her fragile spirit, the way it had once shone brightly, and how Jake had extinguished that light. I raised an eyebrow at her, silently reassuring her that this was for her, for all that she had lost. Once everyone had settled, I cleared my throat, feeling the weight of my heart thundering in my chest. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions raging inside me. We're here not just to catch up, but to address someone who has been hiding behind a mask of charm. I nodded toward Jake, and the mood shifted instantaneously. Laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence brimming with tension. Jake's grin faltered slightly as he furrowed his brow, confusion flickering across his face. What's this about? Come on, man. We're here to have fun. He scoffed, attempting to brush off the palpable tension. But I was done playing games. Mia, I called, my gaze locking onto hers. Can you share the story of how you met Jake? Mia looked up, her expression a mixture of fear and resolve. I thought he loved me, she started, her voice trembling but gaining strength. But it was all a lie. He was using me. Gasps echoed around the room, and Jake's face contorted into a mask of anger. This is ridiculous. Mia, you're twisting things. He barked, but my heart quickened. The moment of revelation was dawning. I stepped forward, feeling the power surge within me. You can't twist the truth, Jake. We have evidence. I activated a projector, and images flickered to life on the screen behind me, screenshots of manipulated texts, emails where Jake had woven his web of deceit, and testimonies from others who had fallen victim to his charm. The looks on the faces of our friends, but more importantly, on Jake's, were priceless. Shock, disbelief, horror. His skin turned an ashen shade, the bravado crumbling as the weight of betrayal bore down on him. What the hell is this? Jake stammered, his confidence evaporating like mist in the morning sun. You can't do this. But I can, I said, my voice rising above the chaos. You thought you could get away with hurting Mia and everyone else, didn't you? You thought you were untouchable. Screams of outrage began to ripple through the group. You manipulated her. How could you? We trusted you. With each accusation, Jake's composure cracked further, revealing the confrontation unraveled like a live wire, sparking chaos in the cafe as people shouted over one another, incredulous at Jake's twisted manipulation. His facade crumbled, revealing the coward he had always been beneath the polished veneer. I stood there, adrenaline coursing through me, my heart pounding like a drum as I watched the truth finally claw its way to the surface. As Jake attempted to defend himself, stammering excuses that fell flat against the weight of the evidence, I felt the room shift. The cacophony of voices reached a fever pitch, friends who had once admired him were now echoing their disgust. I could see Mia in the corner of my vision, her face both pale and fierce, the pain of her betrayal reflected in the storm of emotion swirling around us. This was it, this was the reckoning. The moment we had all awaited, where Jake would no longer be able to hide behind his charm or manipulate the narrative to his advantage. And yet, in the midst of this victory, a chilling realization set in. Once the storm quieted, Jake's face twisted in rage, revealing the raw, unfiltered emotion that had been buried beneath his charm for so long. You'll regret this, he spat, his voice low and menacing. I have connections, and I'll destroy you. For a fleeting moment, anxiety washed over me. I looked around the room, seeing eyes filled with concern, but also a newfound resolve. They were with us now, united against a common enemy. But the consequences of my actions set in motion a chain reaction that would reverberate for months to come. Jake did, in fact, use his connections to retaliate. The following week, I woke up to find my inbox flooded with emails, cease and desist letters, threats of defamation lawsuits, and even an ultimatum. He painted me as an obsessed brother seeking revenge, attempting to turn the narrative on its head. At first, I was terrified. I hadn't expected him to go on the offensive. I spent sleepless nights worrying about the implications for Mia and our friends. Would this spiral out of control? Would he drag everyone down with him in his pursuit of vengeance? But I had gathered my coalition, and they were ready for a fight. We pooled our resources and hired the attorney I had met earlier, one who specialized in defamation and had a reputation for taking down powerful people. With every bit of evidence we collected, our case grew stronger, and we became a force that he couldn't easily dismiss. As the court date approached, I found a sense of calm amidst the chaos. I was no longer merely a brother seeking revenge for his sister. I had transformed into an advocate for all those who had been wronged by Jake, a voice for the silenced, a champion for the truth. With each passing day, I felt like I was shedding my own fears, emerging as a warrior ready to battle the darkness that had engulfed me as life. But the emotional toll was immense. Between court preparations, the whispers of gossip, and the pressure of scrutiny from friends and family, I began to feel the burden of it all. Mia was navigating her own healing, and I felt helpless as I watched her wrestle with the fear and anxiety that still haunted her. Even though we were fighting back, she struggled with her self-worth, often questioning why this had happened to her and how one person could hold so much power over her happiness. One night, after another exhausting day in court, I found us sitting in silence, Mia curled up in a blanket on the couch, and me.
It was one of those rainy Tuesday afternoons where the world feels heavy with secrets, each drop of water an echo of the lies I had been drowning in for months. I sat cross-legged on my bed, the familiar scent of my lavender-scented candles mingling with the cold, metallic smell of the city outside. As I stared at my phone, the screen lit up with another message from him, all sweet emojis and claims of devotion, my heart twisted into knots. His name was Jake, a name that once made my heart flutter but now made my stomach turn. We had been together for 2 years, each moment shared a tapestry woven with laughter, stolen kisses, and whispered dreams. But it was in those quiet moments, when the laughter faded and the silence settled in, that I began to sense something was amiss. I had seen the way he looked at his phone, his face lighting up with a smile that wasn't meant for me, how he'd pull away just enough to keep me guessing. My gut told me what my heart refused to acknowledge: Jake was cheating. My best friend, Sarah, had been the first to plant that seed of doubt in my mind, her voice laced with concern as she recounted her own experiences of betrayal. "Trust your instincts, don't ignore the signs," she implored. Her words echoed in my mind like a haunting melody, growing louder as days turned into weeks. I had wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but fear held me captive like a prisoner in my own heart. What if I was wrong? The thought of losing him terrified me beyond belief. And so, I chose a different path, one lined with cunning and strategy. If he wanted to play a game of deception, I would become the master player. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I hatched my plan, a sickening mix of dread and determination swelling inside me like a storm ready to burst. I set out to create a series of fake dates, carefully staged encounters that would unravel the threads of his lies, revealing the truth hidden beneath his charming facade. In those moments of plotting, the world around me blurred, the raindrops outside mirroring the tumult within. I had become a puppet master, fingers poised over strings of deceit, ready to pull them taut. My heart raced at the thought of each carefully orchestrated scenario, the impending satisfaction of seeing his world turn upside down. No longer would I be the one left in the shadows, waiting for scraps of affection. I was ready to expose his betrayal, no matter the cost. But as I prepared to take those first steps into my dark plan, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that revenge carries its own price, one I wasn't sure I was ready to pay. The days leading up to that fateful moment were torturous, each one dragging on like a slow, suffocating embrace. I had set the stage for Jake's downfall, but with every tick of the clock, a part of me faltered. Doubt crept in like an unwelcome intruder, gnawing at my resolve. Was I really ready for this? Yet there was a moment, a single interaction, that cemented my decision. It was a Saturday evening when he'd invited me to his place, his voice wrapping around me like a warm blanket. We had spent most of the day laughing, our playful banter flowing easily, but lurking beneath the surface was an unease I couldn't shake off. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across his living room, I caught a glimpse of his phone, sitting innocently on the coffee table, screen lit up. It was a notification, a message from someone named Lily. Just as my heart sank into my stomach, he casually reached for it, his fingers brushing against the screen in a way that felt too protective, too secretive. My pulse quickened, and I felt a sudden rush of nausea. "Who's Lily?" I asked, my voice trembling as I tried to maintain a facade of nonchalance. He laughed, a light, airy sound that felt like cold water splashed in my face. "Just a friend from work. You know how it is, right?" He said it so casually, as if his words were meant to soothe, but it only turned my stomach further. "You're the only one I care about." Those words hung in the air like a cruel joke. My heart screamed for clarity, but my mind wrestled with disbelief. Who was Lily? Why did he need to shield this friend from me? My thoughts collided in a whirlwind of confusion, each one fueled by a cocktail of betrayal and heartache. Waking up the next morning, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. The light that usually warmed our shared moments had darkened, casting a pall over my thoughts. I spiraled down an emotional abyss, replaying his laughter, his touch, the way he'd looked at me. It all felt like a carefully crafted facade, and my heart, so eager to believe in love, was now battling overwhelming anger. I turned to Sarah, my confidant, my rock amidst the storm. Over lattes at our favorite cafe, I poured out my pain, my fears, and the unsettling dread that gnawed at me. "I just want the truth, Sarah. I can't keep living like this, wondering if I'm just a backup plan." Her eyes softened with empathy, but I noticed the flicker of something else, encouragement. "You deserve to know, and if he's lying, you need to show him the consequences. You have to be bold enough to uncover the truth." Those words ignited a spark within me, an awakening of sorts. It was a call to arms, a reminder that I was not powerless. I could take control of this situation, flipping the script in a way he never saw coming. The thought of deception became less about revenge and more about liberation, a release from the chains of uncertainty that had bound me for so long. It was that same night that I mapped out my first encounter, a blind date set up with a perfect girl I'd found on social media, someone who looked just enough like me to stir confusion and suspicion. I crafted the message so carefully, making sure it would pop up at the right moment. I imagined him sitting at a bar, glancing at his phone with casual excitement, only to be hit with the shocking realization that I was no longer the only one in his orbit. I wanted him to feel the uncertainty I had endured for so long, the gnawing anxiety of wondering if your partner's affection was genuine or merely a performance. But the energy I had poured into my plan quickly spiraled into something darker. As I executed my first setup, I watched from a distance, my heart racing and mind swirling with anticipation. I had arranged for Jake to be at that bar with his friends when the date was supposed to happen. I imagined seeing his face when he received the message, the moment his carefree laughter would falter into disbelief. But instead of satisfaction, I was gripped by an icy dread. What if he truly loved me? What if this pushed him away permanently? The evening came, the bar buzzing with laughter and chatter, and I stood in the shadows, heart pounding as I watched him. The seconds felt like hours as I witnessed his friends egg him on to check his phone. He laughed boisterously, not knowing that the joke was about to be on him. The moment arrived, he pulled out his phone, and I held my breath, anticipation tearing through me. When he read the message, an innocuous but suggestive text meant to spark his curiosity, I saw the flicker of confusion, then the unmistakable spark of intrigue in his eyes. I was shaking with adrenaline, but a tide of guilt washed over me. I was doing this to expose his lies. Why did it feel like I was cracking open my own heart instead? Suddenly, the joy in my scheme turned bitter. Instead of confronting him with the truth, I was reduced to a mere spectator, watching as he responded with excitement. He typed back, and I could see the way his face lit up with flirtation. My heart sank again, this time deeper than before. The laughter of his friends bounced around me, but I felt utterly isolated, a ghost among the living, trapped in my own twisted game. Over the next couple of weeks, each fake date led to an avalanche of emotions. I carefully orchestrated several setups, each one designed to push Jake closer to the brink of discovery. But with every encounter I facilitated, the weight of my guilt became heavier. I felt like a puppet master entrapped by my own strings, the joy of revenge quickly morphing into an addiction I couldn't control. Then, everything imploded one evening when I received a message from Sarah. It was late, and the ominous tone of her text sent shivers down my spine. "We need to talk. It's about Jake." My heart raced, and I felt the familiar sense of dread return. It appeared he didn't just keep secrets from me, he had secrets from everyone. Sarah had seen him, the real Jake, out with someone else, someone who wasn't part of my cruel game. I confronted her immediately, her words crashing over me like waves. "He was with that girl, Lily," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. I thought I was imagining things, but I saw them together at the new Italian place. They looked close. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The very foundation of my revenge was now a foundation of lies. I had become so lost in orchestrating his downfall that I had overlooked the truth, the very thing I sought to uncover. I had unwittingly turned into a mirror of the deceit I loathed. The next day was a blur of heartache and anger. How could I have thought this would make me feel better? I could barely breathe as I sat in my car, parked just a few blocks away from Jake's apartment, the weight of my phone crushing against my palm. The shrill ring of Sarah's voice replayed in my head, amplifying the chaos inside me as I tried to comprehend what she had just shared. "He was with that girl, Lily," echoed like a warning bell, and in that moment, everything shifted. The carefully woven web of my revenge, once feeling like justice, now tangled into a choking net around my own heart. I stared blankly at the screen, the glow illuminating the contours of my face, which felt increasingly like a stranger. I had believed I was in control, but now I realized I had become a participant in an emotional game I never wanted to play. I had set up my fake dates as a preemptive strike against betrayal, yet in doing so, I'd only mirrored Jake's own deceit. My mind raced back to the countless hours spent crafting messages, picking names, and conjuring fake personas. I had taken pleasure in imagining his face when he realized what was happening, but now all I could picture was the hurt I was inflicting. What would a part of me become if I went through with this? With bated breath, I pulled up my messages, scrolling through the fake conversations I had orchestrated, the excitement of each date now tinged with an unsettling bitterness. As I contemplated deleting the whole charade, my heart thundered in my chest, a symphony of doubt and fear playing in perfect discord. What would happen if I pulled back now? Would he slide further into the arms of that Lily, creating an even deeper rift between us? Then it hit me like a punch to the gut. I was losing sight of the real betrayal, the truth. I had wanted to expose him, to drag his lies into the light, but I had become ensnared in my own duplicity. I was no better than the man I was trying to dethrone. I had made myself a villain in my own story, and it was suffocating. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. In that moment of clarity that cut through the fog of anger and betrayal, I realized I needed to confront him, not with a trap or a scheme, but with honesty. I pictured his face, the easy grin that had once brightened my world, and the laughter that felt so distant now. I missed him, the real him, and the idea that I was willing to destroy that made my stomach churn. But before I could convince myself of this new path, I glanced down and saw a notification on my phone, a message from Jake. My breath hitched. Did he know? Was this the moment everything would unravel? I swiped to open the message, my heart racing, only to find it was a simple, innocuous text. "Hey babe, can we talk later? I need to clear some things up." The words sat heavily in the air, and suddenly, I was gripped by a chilling sense of urgency, a fear that perhaps he was about to confess something that would shatter my already fragile heart. I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood, the sweet irony of that familiar pain racing through me. Was this the moment I had been waiting for, or was it the prelude to a deeper betrayal? That suffocating feeling returned as I processed everything. I had orchestrated layers of deception, but I realized I was the one trapped. My fingers hovered over my phone, torn between fear and resolve. Did I want to continue? As I sat in my car, the chaos of conflicting emotions swirling in my mind, I resolved to move forward. I had initially set out to expose Jake's betrayals, but now I felt a new clarity forming around my original intentions. I was done being the one bewildered by uncertainty. I would execute my revenge, not to destroy him, but to reclaim my own sense of agency and clarity. With determination hardened by the fear of losing myself in my own deceptions, I sketched out a clever plan to stage one final fake date that would lay bare Jake's true character, while simultaneously showing him the consequences of his actions. This time, I would not just sit back and observe, I would be the architect of my own empowerment. Step 1. Develop the setup. I had already established a few dates that I had set up, each one designed to elicit a reaction from Jake, but this would be the grand finale. I decided to recruit an accomplice, someone who could play the part of the supposed new girlfriend convincingly. That's when I thought of Mia, a mutual friend who had a flair for drama and an understanding of my situation. I reached out to her, explaining everything in detail, and to my relief, she was eager to help. Step 2. Craft the illusion. Mia and I brainstormed a backstory. She would create a social media profile, a cute, outgoing girl named Sophie who just moved to the city and was looking for someone to show her around. Together, we crafted a series of flirty messages, peppered with laughter and shared interests, that would lead Jake to believe that he had stumbled into something exciting and new. I even had Mia send Jake a picture of herself in a cute cafe, casually mentioning how much she liked the same coffee he loved. The more familiar she seemed, the more real it would feel to him. Step 3. Set the date. We agreed on a public place for the encounter. A trendy bar downtown, where Jake and his friends often hung out. I wanted him to see for himself what it felt like to be on the other side of the equation. Mia sent Jake a message inviting him out for drinks, and to my quiet satisfaction, his excitement was palpable. It was as if I could feel his eagerness through the screen. Step 4. The reveal. On the night of the setup, Jake strolled into the bar with his usual bravado, dressed in his casual best, and I quietly positioned myself at a table across the room. My heart raced, not with revenge but with anxiety. What if he didn't take the bait? What if he just brushed it off? My palms were sweaty as I watched him scan the room for this Sophie character, clearly intrigued by the mystery. Mia arrived shortly thereafter, the perfect picture of brightness and charm. She smiled at Jake, and I could see the initial spark of attraction flicker in his eyes. They exchanged pleasantries and began to chat, and with each minute that passed, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and dread. This was the moment he would realize the weight of his actions. Step 5. The confrontation. As the evening wore on, I had orchestrated an unexpected twist. I had confided in another friend, Tom, about my plan, and he agreed to drop by the bar to casually check in on me. He was the perfect wrench in the gears of Jake's deception. As Tom entered and waved at me, I caught Jake's eye, and the realization hit him like a freight climax. Jake's laughter echoed in the dimly lit bar, a sound that once filled me with warmth. Now, it clawed at my insides, grating against the reality I could no longer ignore. I shifted in my seat, my heart pounding as I watched him lean in closer to Mia, his eyes sparkling with mischief. They were building a connection, and with every shared joke, I felt the walls I had erected around my heart begin to crumble. But I had a plan. I inhaled deeply, grounding myself as I leaned into the moment. This was the climax of my revenge. I had to see it through. Tom's presence became my anchor. He approached our table, and I could see Jake's gaze shift. The realization dawned. He knew Tom, and as he pieced together our connection, the smile on his face faltered. The air in the bar felt electric, charged with unsaid words and raw emotions. "Hey, I didn't know you were here," Tom said, his tone casual, but his eyes scanning the situation with sharp precision. Mia took the cue and introduced herself, but Jake's expression was a mask of confusion. "Wait, you know her?" He directed the question at Tom, his voice edged with uncertainty. "Yeah, we go way back," Tom replied smoothly, giving me a quick glance as if to say, "Are you ready for this?" Time slowed. I leaned forward, my pulse racing, heart thrumming in my ears like a war drum. I could see the gears turning in Jake's mind, the realization of something slipping out of his grasp. He was on the precipice of understanding. I could feel it. Suddenly, I stood up, my decision igniting my veins with fury and clarity. "Jake. We need to talk." My voice rang out, slicing through the chatter of the bar. Heads turned, and the laughter dimmed to a hush. Jake's jaw tightened as he faced me, surprise morphing into wariness. "What are you doing here?" he asked, a hint of impatience lacing his words. It was a question brimming with pretense, A thin veil over the truth that lingered just beneath the surface. Is that so? I shot back, locking my gaze onto his, daring him to look away. The heat of the moment surrounded us as I took a step closer, feeling the weight of every shared memory pressing against my chest. You don't think I would let you embarrass me without a word, do you? His expression shifted, a flash of panic crossing his features as he glanced at Mia. The tension was suffocating, a thick fog of realization that hung heavy between us. Every secret, every lie we'd crafted, now spiraled into the air like a plume of smoke, dissipating slowly but surely. Wait, what do you mean? He stammered, his bravado faltering as confusion danced in his eyes. I couldn't hold back the bitterness that seeped into my tone. You thought you could have it all, didn't you? While I was sitting at home, wondering if you were actually mine? This is your chance to come clean, Jake. Because if you think you can just waltz away from this with a pretty smile while I'm left in the dark, you're mistaken. Mia caught on, and without skipping a beat, she added, You're right, Jake. We were just talking about how little we know about you. Her voice dripped with false innocence, a light-hearted jab that cut deeper than any knife. Jake's expression shifted from confusion to panic, his eyes darting back and forth between Mia and me as if we were two predators ready to pounce. Denial flickered across his features like a candle caught in a gust of wind. This is ridiculous, he said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Ridiculous? You're the one who's been playing games. I felt a surge of power in speaking my truth, exposure transforming the weight of my anguish into something more bearable. You've been caught between your lies and my reality. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or did you think I wouldn't care? The atmosphere in the bar had thickened, whispers floated around us like a fog, all eyes riveted to our confrontation. Time seemed suspended in that moment, and a sensory overload washed over me, the faint clinking of glasses, the vibrant laughter of strangers, and the palpable tension that hung between us like a storm cloud waiting to burst. I stood firm, my heartbeat steadying as I glared at him, determined not to let his bravado rattle me. You've made your choice, Jake. While you enjoyed flirting with your little friends, I was building a life we could have shared. Did you think I wouldn't find the truth? Or that I wouldn't take matters into my own hands? His facade cracked, and I could see the real Jake, the frightened boy who didn't know how to face the consequences of his actions. I had expected anger, but all I saw was a mask slipping away, revealing a vulnerability he had hid beneath layers of charm and deception. I didn't mean for it to get this far, he stammered, his bravado fading like a whisper. And what exactly did you mean? I pressed, was it just another game too, you? Another opportunity to play both sides? My voice was sharp, each word slicing through the remnants of the love I thought we shared. I set up those dates to expose you, but I ended up exposing myself, to the truth about who you really are. He opened his mouth to respond, but the silence between us felt heavy, laced with the aching realization that whatever shred of sincerity he may have had was crumbling. I didn't want to hurt you, he finally replied, the desperation creeping back into his voice. Too late for that, I shot back, the passion igniting a fire within me as the room began to buzz with the resonating energy of the revelation. I could sense the weight of other people's attention, their curiosity heightened by the unfolding drama. The emotional stakes had risen, and I felt strangely liberated, like a bird breaking free from its cage. With a final, piercing gaze, I turned away from him, my heart racing as I walked away. I didn't need to hear any more excuses or half-hearted apologies. The truth was laid bare, and I had done what I set out to do. There would be no reversal of roles this time, I was reclaiming my dignity. As I stepped outside the bar, the cool night air hit me like a bomb, washing away the remnants of my turmoil. I savored the sensation of the rain slowly beginning to fall, each drop mingling with my tears, creating a cathartic release. Beneath the stormy sky, I found clarity in the chaos. I had chosen to confront my own vulnerability, and in doing so, I had reclaimed my power. In the days that followed, Jake's reactions were a cocktail of fragmented apologies and attempts to reconcile, but there was no going back. I remained steadfast in my decision.
March in Oregon is often a dreary affair. The rain hangs in the air like an uninvited guest, and the skies are a perpetual shade of gray. But that morning, As I sipped my lukewarm coffee while perched on the edge of my couch, a chill ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the email ping that shattered my morning routine. I'm Emily, a 32-year-old marketing professional who has always believed in the good in people. I'm the kind of person who smiles at strangers in the grocery store and holds the door open for anyone behind me. Small acts of kindness, I thought, were the glue that held society together. But that morning, I learned how quickly that belief can be shattered. As I opened the notification, my heart sank. The subject line read, "Delivery confirmation from Panera Bread." At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a mix-up at the restaurant. But as I read through the details, my stomach twisted into knots. Someone, a complete stranger, had used my account to order an extravagant feast, sandwiches, soups, salads, and even pastries, all delivered to an address on the other side of the country. The name attached to the order was Kyle Thompson, and a Google search revealed he lived in Virginia Beach. I felt a surge of anger wash over me, followed by a wave of disbelief. How could someone be so brazen? I had never met this Kyle, had no connection to him, yet here he was, enjoying my hard-earned money as he stuffed his face with my favorite bread bowl. I could see it all play out in my mind, him lounging on his couch, laughing over a mountain of food that wasn't his. The thought of him savoring every bite made my blood boil. I felt like a victim in a crime drama, trapped in a narrative I didn't even write. My roommates, Sarah and Jess, had gone off to work that morning, and I was alone, left to wrestle with my rising frustration. I paced the living room, the rain drumming against the window like a relentless reminder of my helplessness. I could call customer service, I thought, but would that really bring me justice? A warm pang of vindictiveness curled around my heart, and I felt a flicker of determination igniting within me. This wasn't just about food, it was about respect and boundaries. I wanted to confront Kyle Thompson, to let him know that I wouldn't just let this slide. My mind raced with possibilities. Before long, I was no longer the victim in this story, I was a woman on a mission. As I stared into the rain-soaked streets outside, a plan began to form, one that would surely take me down a darker path than I ever imagined. The thrill of potential revenge buzzed through me like a jolt of electricity. I was no longer just a woman whose kindness had been taken advantage of. I was a woman ready to reclaim her power. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. And that's how my quest for vengeance began. What unfolded next was a roller coaster of emotions, ethical dilemmas, and the lengths I was willing to go to for justice, all sparked by a simple act of theft that changed everything. Stay tuned as I unravel the layers of my revenge plot, and perhaps offer a glimpse into the darkness that can reside in us all. The moment I realized that someone had taken my identity to fill their own stomach was a gut punch. It was more than just food, it was a violation of trust, a betrayal that left a sour taste in my mouth. I had shared countless moments with my Panera Bread account, late-night dinners after long workdays, celebratory lunches with friends, even those comforting bread bowls when life felt overwhelming. Each order was a small piece of my routine, a ritual that brought me joy. But now, that joy was twisted into something grotesque. I couldn't escape the image of Kyle lounging in his apartment, blissfully unaware of the chaos he had caused. My heart raced as I imagined him laughing with friends, enjoying the culinary spoils of my labor as if he had done something to earn it. It was infuriating. What made him think he could steal from me without consequence? I envisioned his smirk, the carefree attitude he likely possessed, and it gnawed at my insides like a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. My initial reaction was to contact Panera Bread, to report the fraudulent transaction, to call in the cavalry and reclaim what was stolen. But as the minutes turned into hours and my anger simmered, I realized that wouldn't be enough. I felt small and powerless, trapped in a system that would likely treat my complaint as just another number to add to a pile of complaints. Would they even care about my story? Then, a wave of indignation surged through me, this time more potent, more intoxicating. I was done playing the victim. This wasn't just about money, it was about standing up for myself. It was about sending a message that I wouldn't allow someone to trample over my life without repercussions. As the weight of this injustice bore down on me, I felt a shift inside. I was tired of being the nice girl, the one who lets things slide. The thought of confronting Kyle sent a thrill through me, electrifying my vengeful spirit. I felt the morbid sense of empowerment in knowing that I had his name and address, a key to his world that he had unwittingly handed me. I began to imagine scenarios, perhaps an anonymous email detailing his theft, maybe a letter that would unnerve him just enough to understand the consequences of his actions. I could expose him, make him feel the same fear and shame I felt at the moment of discovery. Yet, with each plan I constructed, I was drawn deeper into a moral spiral. Was I really just a young woman seeking justice, or had I transformed into something darker? The line between right and wrong began to blur, and the thrill of revenge entangled itself with the reality of my actions. I grappled with the ethical implications of my desire. What did it say about me that I couldn't simply let it go? My emotions swung like a pendulum. One moment I felt righteous and empowered, the next I was plagued with guilt. What if I took it too far? What if my actions only fed the cycle of negativity? This internal conflict raged within me as I paced my apartment, feeling the walls close in on my conscience. I caught sight of my reflection in the window, the rain cascading down like tears, and I wondered who I had become. The innocent girl who believed in kindness and empathy was slipping away, replaced by a woman fueled by anger and a thirst for retribution. I had to make a choice, to rise above or to descend into a shadow of myself, willing to play a game that could potentially ruin me. But as night fell and the rain continued to patter against my window, I made my decision. Kyle Thompson had crossed a line, and I refused to be a victim any longer. I would investigate, gather information, and weave a plan that wouldn't just expose him but would leave a mark on his conscience, a mark that would ensure he never forgot the day he stole from me. And so, fueled by a mix of righteousness and rage, I embarked on my dark journey. This wasn't just about Panera Bread anymore. It was about me reclaiming my power, and I was ready to unleash the storm I had been brewing inside. Days slipped by like the rain drenching the streets outside, but the anger simmered just below the surface, refusing to extinguish. Each morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose, my mind spinning with ideas on how to take action against Kyle. At times, I questioned my sanity. Why was I so fixated on someone who had, essentially, just been a blip on my radar? Yet, the image of him indulging in my hard-earned meals haunted me like a ghost, a constant reminder of my violation. Eventually, I decided to take the plunge. I dug deeper into my research. I learned every detail about Kyle Thompson I could find, his social media profiles, his friends, and even his family. It was unnerving, the way my heart raced with each click. I felt like a detective, piecing together the puzzle of a stranger's life, but all I was really doing was sinking deeper into a dark obsession. Then, one evening, I struck gold. While scrolling through an old Facebook profile, I noticed him tagged in a post, a birthday celebration with friends. They laughed and clinked glasses, the kind of joy I had once found in my own life. I felt a surge of envy, not just for the food he had stolen but for the happiness he radiated, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling within me. It felt wrong, almost vulgar, to witness his life while mine felt like a shadow of what it once was. That night, I crafted an anonymous message. I know what you did, Kyle. You stole from me. I have your address. You might want to think twice before doing this again. I sent it through his social media, my heart pounding as I clicked send. Immediately, a sense of exhilaration washed over me, but it was quickly followed by dread. What if he retaliated? What if he didn't even care? But there was no turning back. I had already crossed a line into a territory I never thought I'd visit. I spent the next few days obsessively checking my inbox, waiting for a reply that would validate my actions. But nothing came. Instead, I found myself spiraling deeper into my feelings of inadequacy. The rain matched my mood, the sound growing heavier, drowning out my thoughts. My roommates noticed my distraction. Sarah asked if I was okay, but I brushed her off. I didn't want to admit that my life had become this twisted narrative. I was living with a sense of impending doom, teetering between the thrill of my actions and the guilt that seemed to seep into my very core. Then came the breaking point. While sitting at my desk, anxiously refreshing my email for the 100th time, another notification pinged. It was an email from Panera Bread, but this time it was a notice of a new transaction. My heart raced, but when I opened it, panic surged through my veins. Kyle had used my account again. This time, he ordered an even larger feast, a buffet of his favorites, accompanied by a note that said, "Thanks for the gift." The words felt like a slap in the face. I had warned him, yet he had the audacity to mock me, to revel in my kindness turned against me. That moment, the realization of my powerlessness struck me harder than any thunderous storm outside. I was furious, but also deeply unsettled. This wasn't just about revenge now, it was personal. In that split second, a decision crystallized. If he wanted to play games, I could play too. I began to craft a more elaborate plan, one that would ensure that Kyle would feel the consequences of his actions in a way that would shake his bravado. This was no longer about sending a message, it was about taking back control, about injecting fear into someone who thought they could outsmart me. I began to put together his life, his friends, his favorite hangouts, all drawn from the breadcrumbs left on social media. I dug up his work location, his hobbies, and even his favorite charities. The more I learned, the more emboldened I felt, the rush of revenge morphing into an exhilarating high. I was no longer just a victim, I was an architect of my own justice, and the stakes were rising. But along with that excitement came a growing sense of dread. As I plotted my next steps, the weight of my actions loomed over me like a dark cloud. I was stepping into a territory I could not control, and the thought of what I might become terrified me. What if I crossed a line I couldn't uncross? The final straw was the day I received a notification from my bank stating that my credit card had seen unusual activity. My heart sank as I read the charges. Kyle had not only exploited my Panera account but had also accessed my payment information to order from other places. Now, I felt raw, exposed, like a marionette with strings cut. I was at war, not just with Kyle but with myself. The adrenaline surged through me like a drug, and I realized then and there that I was in too deep to back out. I had to see this through, for better or worse. The thrill of planning something grander, something that would make Kyle feel the devastation he had caused me, took over my every waking thought. I resolved to gather my findings and plot out the details meticulously, ensuring that my revenge would be as painful for him as his actions had been for me. In that moment of clarity, I embraced the darkness within me, knowing that I would not rest until Kyle Thompson understood the true meaning of consequences and the price of his recklessness. I would show him that actions have both repercussions and a reckoning. The storm was brewing, and I would unleash it. But at what cost? The question loomed like a specter, a reminder that in this game, I was no longer just a player, but perhaps the pawn destined to sacrifice my soul for the sake of victory. And so, the gears began to turn, and the stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. Would I reclaim my dignity, or was I destined to lose myself in the pursuit of vengeance? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain, I was ready to dive into the tempest, and I wouldn't emerge unscathed. The rain continued to pour outside, but now it felt like a symphony of chaos, an echo of the storm brewing within me. Kyle was about to learn that revenge is a dish best served chilly, and I was ready to feast. Stay tuned for the culmination of my journey, a confrontation that would shake the foundation of my beliefs and test the very essence of who I was becoming. Would I find the closure I sought, or would my quest for revenge unravel everything I held dear? Join me as I delve into the storm, where shadows and light intertwine in ways I never anticipated. The rain had become a near constant companion, drumming against the windows like the heartbeat of my rising fury. I could barely focus on work as I dove deeper into my plan, stirring my thoughts into a frenzied whirlpool of ideas. Every time I thought about Kyle lounging on his couch, gorging himself on food that didn't belong to him, the fire within me reignited. The more I lingered on it, the clearer my resolution became. I wouldn't just let this slide. I wanted Kyle to feel the weight of his actions, to understand the ripple effect of his selfishness. One particularly dreary afternoon, a thunderstorm brewed outside, mirroring the tempest inside of me. I sat at my desk, staring at the wall, my mind racing through scenarios. I pictured him, the smirk of triumph on his face as he received another delivery on my dime. It was as if he was laughing at me. At that moment, I felt the darkness wrap around me like a cloak, whispering sweet promises of revenge. I leaned forward, heart thudding in my chest, and pulled out a notepad. As I wrote down my thoughts, the words flowed like an uncontrollable current. Expose him. Embarrass him. Make him feel small. I began to outline the steps of my plan, mapping out my revenge like a seasoned tactician. I could send an anonymous letter to his workplace, detailing his theft. Perhaps I could reach out to his friends, alerting them to the cheater in their midst. Or better yet, I could file a report with the police, creating an air of fear that would leave him constantly looking over his shoulder. But with every suggestion I wrote down, a flicker of doubt would creep in, reminding me of the kind-hearted person I used to be. Was this really me? I was a girl who believed in kindness, who found joy in small acts of empathy. Now I was transforming into a specter of vengeance, willing to go to terrifying lengths simply to teach someone a lesson. In that moment, a wave of clarity washed over me. My hand paused over the page as I contemplated my moral compass. It felt as if I were standing at a crossroads, and the path I chose would define who I would become. It struck me that revenge was seductive, it promised satisfaction, a sense of retribution, but at what cost? How far was I willing to go to satisfy my bitterness? But as I weighed my options, another thought ignited the flame within me: he deserved this. He had invaded my life uninvited, taken from me without remorse, and reveled in the spoils of my hard work. As this realization settled over me, a sense of empowerment surged through me. I was not just a victim, I had the power to turn the tables. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when I received a notification on my phone. Kyle had posted a photo of the food he had ordered, showcasing a feast sprawled across his dining table. Underneath it, he had captioned, "A little gift from my favorite Panera Bread fan." At that moment, I snapped. The audacity of him made my blood boil. Fueled by fury and betrayal, I made my decision: I would disrupt his life the way he had disrupted mine. I envisioned him receiving a barrage of complaints from his friends, co-workers, even family. I would weave a web around him that would ensnare his very sanity. The rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins felt intoxicating. This was the turning point I had been waiting for, the moment I realized that I could take control of the narrative. That night, I crafted my letters meticulously. Each one was a warning, a reminder that he had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I printed them out, feeling a sense of glee as I prepared envelopes addressed to his job and friends. This would be an act of exposure, one that would leave no room for denial. As I licked the envelope seals, the weight of the world seemed to lift off my shoulders. It felt liberating to step into my power, to embrace the darker side of myself that had been simmering just beneath the surface. I wasn't just reclaiming my dignity, I was about to unleash a storm upon Kyle Thompson, and there was no turning back. And so, the die was cast. I sealed the envelopes and slipped them into the mailbox with a sense of finality. I felt alive, invigorated by the prospect of revenge and the prospect of justice, served cold. My heart raced as I imagined Kyle's reaction, the shock, the fear that would ripple through his life like an earthquake. With each passing moment, I realized I had crossed a threshold. I was no longer just a woman wronged, I had become an avenger, an architect of chaos, ready to dismantle the illusion of control Kyle had so carelessly wielded. The storm outside paled in comparison to the tempest within me. I had ignited something vile and glorious within, an urge that I knew would not be easily extinguished. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a twisted journey that would force me to confront the very darkness I had embraced. I was all in now, and nothing could stop the reckoning that was coming for Kyle Thompson. It would be tit for tat, until he understood the true meaning of accountability. The night was dark, but my resolve illuminated the path ahead. And with that determination, I took a deep breath, ready to dive into the chaos I had unleashed. The storm had broken, now it was only a matter of time before the winds turned against Kyle. Stay tuned as I navigate the uncharted waters of my unfolding revenge, grappling with the shadows of my own making. Would I find satisfaction, or would the price of vengeance lead to unforeseen consequences? Join me in the next chapters as the story dives deeper into the maelstrom of my choices, where the line between right and wrong becomes blurred in the face of retribution. With my heart pounding in sync with the relentless rain outside, I knew it was time to execute the next phase of my revenge on Kyle Thompson. I felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through me, a potent cocktail of fury and determination. I began to map out a detailed plan that promised not just satisfaction, but a reckoning that Kyle would never forget. The first part of my plan was deceptively simple. I crafted several anonymous complaints targeting different aspects of Kyle's life. I used an old email address that I hadn't touched in years, one that would never trace back to me. I composed each email with a level of precision that matched my growing excitement. I started with his workplace, sending a message to HR, detailing how Kyle had committed fraud by using my credit card. I attached screenshots of my Panera Bread account showing the unauthorized orders and emphasized the need for immediate action. I painted a vivid picture of how irresponsible he was, thrusting the very notion of trust into the spotlight. Next, I moved on to his friends. I found their social media accounts and crafted a message that played on my own victimhood. Hey, I don't want to cause drama, but I think you should know that Kyle has been ordering food using someone else's credit card. It's pretty messed up, right? Just thought you should be aware. With each message I sent, I felt an exhilarating sense of control washing over me. I imagined the ripple effect of doubt and anxiety seeping into Kyle's life, displacing the smugness he had displayed in his posts. Fueled by the initial success, I moved to phase 2, the social media expose. I crafted a fake profile, complete with a believable backstory. I positioned myself as a concerned citizen of Virginia Beach who just happened to notice a red flag involving a local man who had been ordering food under dubious circumstances. I took screenshots of Kyle's food posts, his lavish meals, proudly showcased on Instagram, and paired them with my own polite but pointed observations. Isn't it funny how someone can enjoy such expensive meals without ever paying for them? Just a thought. #support local businesses. I felt an undeniable thrill at the idea of Kyle's friends and family discovering his deceit. I imagined their shock and disappointment, and it sent shivers of excitement down my spine. As my digital assault began, I prepared for phase 3, the unforgettable delivery. I decided to hit Kyle where it would hurt the most, his stomach, the very thing he had violated. Using the address I had found earlier, I scoured local delivery services and found a few restaurants that offered large family-style meals. I placed multiple orders under his name, each one more extravagant than the last. I scheduled the deliveries for the following Friday evening, ensuring they coincided with the time when he'd likely be home. I could envision him answering the door, bewildered, as a parade of unsuspecting delivery drivers presented him with mountains of food he didn't order. I couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of his confusion, his smug demeanor cracking as he was inundated with orders he had never placed. I even left a note with one of the orders that read, "Enjoy your next meal, Kyle. You might want to check your credit card statements." But I didn't stop there. The grand finale would be the most exhilarating part of my plan, the moment where everything I had done came crashing down on him. I knew that nothing would embarrass Kyle more than being exposed not just to his friends, but to the entire community. So, I reached out to a few local blogs and small news sites, crafting a story about a local fraudster who had been stealing food from others. I shared the crafted evidence, my anonymous emails to his workplace, the screenshots of his lavish meals, and the complaints that had flooded in. I spun a tale of betrayal, emphasizing how Kyle hadn't just stolen food but had undermined the very essence of community support. My goal was to set the wheels of social punishment in motion so that when the news broke, he would be left reeling from the consequences, his reputation painted in shades of deceit. With each step of my plan unfolding, I felt an intoxicating mix of satisfaction and dread. I was no longer just a woman seeking revenge, I was the orchestrator of an elaborate scheme that straddled the line between justice and chaos. But deep down, a part of me questioned just how far I was willing to go. Every email I sent, every package I ordered, brought me closer to someone I barely knew, yet I was becoming increasingly entangled in a web of my own making. As the hours turned to days, I became increasingly eager to see my plan come to fruition. I could already imagine the fallout, the confusion, the anger, and ultimately, the reckoning that would end with Kyle facing the consequences of his careless actions. I felt alive, but I also felt the weight of the darkness I was embracing. Would this truly lead to my closure, or would it only deepen my sense of resentment and guilt? There was no turning back now, and as the adage goes, revenge is a dish best served cold, just like the food Kyle had stolen from me. The stage was set, and I was ready to unleash the storm I had been brewing, unaware of the emotional turbulence that awaited me on this journey of retribution. Join me as I delve deeper into the chaos, navigating the shadows of my revenge, and exploring the consequences of my actions. Could this path of vengeance ultimately lead to my own self-destruction, or would it grant me the closure I so desperately sought? Stay tuned for the heart-pounding climax where the storm collides with reality, and the true cost of revenge becomes painfully clear. The day had finally arrived, a culmination of my pent-up anger and meticulously crafted plans. I felt a potent cocktail of exhilaration and dread swirling in my stomach as the storm clouds gathered overhead, mirroring the tempest within me. Friday evening was set for Kyle's grand reveal, and I stood before the mirror, steeling myself for what was about to unfold. As the clock ticked closer to delivery time, I replayed every detail of my plot in my head. The multitude of food orders I had scheduled to arrive at Kyle's door felt like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode and lay bare the depths of his deceit. At the same time, I couldn't shake the creeping doubt: was I truly prepared for the chaos that would ensue? In my quest for revenge, I had crossed a threshold into a world where the outcome was uncertain, and the stakes grew higher with every passing moment. As the clock struck 6 p.m., I sat on my couch, heart pounding, eyes glued to my phone. My fingers trembled as I refreshed social media, waiting for the first signs that my plan had worked. I couldn't help but imagine the scene unfolding in his apartment: Kyle, smug and satisfied, taking his place in front of the door as delivery after delivery arrived. Each knock would peel back another layer of his false bravado, leaving him vulnerable and exposed. Then, the notifications started rolling in. Pictures popped up on my feed, capturing the scene from every angle. Friends tagged him, their messages filled with disbelief and laughter. "Wow, what a feast." Read one comment. "Did you win the lottery, Kyle?" Chimed in another. The rush of satisfaction surged through me, igniting my heart like a roaring fire. But just as I reveled in my small victory, my phone buzzed with a direct message, a message that made my blood run cold. "Emily, is there something you want to tell me?" It was Sarah, my roommate. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized she had seen the posts, probably even the contentious emails I had sent. A wave of unease washed over me. Had my actions truly spiraled beyond my control? I quickly composed myself, crafting a response that sounded casual, nonchalant. "What do you mean?" I wrote back, heart racing. "Just saw some wild stuff on social media. What's going on with Kyle Thompson? Seems like you've got a personal vendetta against him?" Panic fluttered in my chest. Had I gone too far? The whirlwind of excitement from the night shifted, turning into a storm of anxiety. I returned to the chaos unfolding in Kyle's world, refreshing his social media once more. It was a flurry of activity, his friends were in disbelief, and the social media storm was gaining momentum. But then, one comment caught my eye and sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. "Kyle, I think someone's stalking you. Are you okay?" My heart sank. I realized I hadn't just orchestrated his exposure, I had potentially put myself in the line of fire as well. Had my actions turned me into a villain in this narrative? As I stepped back and surveyed the damage I had wrought, doubt gnawed at the edges of my satisfaction. The darkness I had embraced was now creeping around me, wrapping its tendrils around my conscience. But there was no time for second-guessing. I was in too deep, and the final act of my plan was lying in wait. The doorbell rang, echoing through the house, every fiber of my being tingled with anticipation. This was the moment. I jumped up and rushed to the window, peeking through the curtains to catch a glimpse of the chaos outside. To my surprise, I saw Kyle standing at his doorstep, flanked by delivery drivers holding an array of food bags, his expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. I couldn't help but smile, the satisfaction swelling as he fumbled with his phone, likely trying to piece together what the hell was happening. But then, I noticed something I hadn't anticipated: a camera crew hidden in the bushes across the street. A local news van was documenting the unfolding spectacle. Apparently, I wasn't the only one interested in Kyle's downfall. I watched in disbelief as the crew honed in on him, their cameras rolling and capturing every moment of his utter humiliation. In that jarring moment, the weight of my actions slammed down on me like a tidal wave. I had unleashed a storm not just on Kyle, but also on myself. What had started as a simple act of revenge was spiraling into a public spectacle, one that would follow Kyle and potentially destroy me along with him. Every ounce of triumph I had felt moments earlier faded. I processed the reality of the situation. The thrill of watching him unravel was quickly eclipsed by the realization that I had crossed a line I could never uncross. I was now an unwitting participant in a public shaming, a dark figure, lurking in the shadows of my own drama. The reporters began to approach Kyle, thrusting microphones into his face, and I felt my heart drop as he struggled to explain. "I don't know what's happening. Someone hacked my account," he stammered, the color draining from his face. How deliciously poetic, I thought, but I was quickly drowned in the realization that my involvement could very well become a narrative of its own. In the aftermath of this chaos, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Sarah and Jess. They were confused and alarmed, and I could sense that their text messages were pushing the boundaries of concern and anger. "Emily, what did you do? This is getting out of hand." Read one message. In that moment, I was faced with a decision: to step forward and reclaim my narrative or to retreat into the shadows, leaving Kyle to fend for himself amidst the rising storm. Guilt rushed through me, intertwining with the remnants of my desire for vengeance. Would I have to face the consequences of my actions? Would I be the monster in this story? As I sat frozen in my indecision, I caught a glimpse of Kyle collapsing against his doorway, consumed by the weight of his humiliation and the scrutiny of the world. Suddenly, it wasn't just about revenge, it was about seeing the humanity in him, despite the pain he had inflicted on me. Torn between the satisfaction of his downfall and the wisdom of compassion, I knew it was time to make a choice. The storm was raging, both outside and within, and as I took a deep breath, I felt the tide turning. Would I let my quest for revenge consume me, or could I find a way to reclaim my dignity without sacrificing my soul? The question loomed large as the chaos unfolded before me. I was standing at a crossroads, a moment where I could either embrace the consequences of my actions or choose a path of redemption for both Kyle and myself. The climax of my revenge story had arrived, and it held within it the potential for change. Would I step into the light, or was I destined to lose myself in the shadows? Stay tuned as I navigate the consequences of my actions and determine whether the storm of revenge can lead to a moment of self-discovery or if it will ultimately drown me in darkness. Join me as I explore the final confrontation, where the lines between right and wrong become blurred, and the true cost of vengeance is revealed. As the cameras rolled and the world bore witness to Kyle's unraveling, I felt my pulse quicken. The weight of my revenge sat heavily on my chest, even as the initial satisfaction of seeing him squirm melted into something more complex and nagging. The thrill had turned sour, morphing into a concoction of guilt, anxiety, and shame. This spectacle was no longer just about him, it was about me, too, my choices, my morality, my humanity. I stood frozen behind the curtain, a voyeur in my own drama. I watched as the local news anchor dissected the events unfolding before them, framing Kyle not just as a fraud, but as a tragic figure caught in a web of his own deceit. With every word, I felt my heart sink deeper into guilt's grasp. Had I really done this? Had my need for retribution transformed me into the very monster I had sought to expose? The rain continued to pour outside, an endless rhythm echoing the turmoil within me. A notification pinged on my phone, drawing my attention away from the scene. It was a message from Sarah. "Emily, you need to explain yourself. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't you." Her words hit me like a cold slap. This wasn't who I was. I had spent years trying to build a life rooted in kindness, yet here I was, orchestrating a public humiliation for someone who had wronged me. The irony was hard to swallow. In seeking to reclaim my power, I had inadvertently become the very thing I loathed. As Kyle's face filled the screen, a cascade of emotions washed over me. Confusion, embarrassment, and betrayal painted across his features. I couldn't help but reflect on my own emotions during that fateful morning. Anger and frustration had consumed me, but now, watching him bear the weight of public scrutiny, I felt a strange empathy twisting in my gut. Was I really any better than he was? I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I needed to respond to Sarah, to explain myself. But what could I say? I lost myself and revenge didn't feel like an acceptable excuse. I needed to grapple with the reality that I had crossed a line, and the consequences were rippling far beyond Kyle's doorstep. The phone buzzed again, followed by a flood of notifications from social media, a whirlwind of comments, tags, and news articles about Panera Bread fraud, the shocking local story. My stomach clenched at the thought of my name being dragged into the narrative. What had I done? Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Jess. "Emily, what the hell is going on? You've got to come home and talk to us." The urgency in her voice pierced through the fog clouding my mind. I knew I couldn't ignore this any longer. With a sense of dread tightening my chest, I made my way back to my apartment, each step heavy with the burden of my actions. My roommates were waiting for me, their faces a mixture of concern and disappointment. "Emily, what were you thinking?" Sarah asked as I entered, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "This isn't like you. You've sunk to his level." "It was supposed to be a warning," I blurted out, desperately trying to justify my choices. "He stole from me. He was getting away with it." "Stealing from you doesn't justify this," Jess interjected, her voice steady but full of gravity. "You've turned into someone we don't recognize. This is not who you are." Their words hit hard, and I felt the walls of my carefully crafted justification begin to crumble. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands, overwhelmed by the realization that I had become entangled in a web of my own making. "I just wanted him to understand," I whispered, the weight of shame crashing down upon me. "I wanted him to feel the fear I felt when I realized what he had done." Sarah sat beside me, her expression softened. "But does he? Does he even know you're behind this? You've created this persona of revenge, Emily. You need to decide who you want to be." In that moment, the clarity I had been avoiding washed over me like a cleansing rain. I realized that revenge wasn't going to fill the void of betrayal or restore my sense of dignity. Instead, it had only left me feeling hollow and empty, disconnected from the person I truly wanted to be. "I need to make this right," I said firmly, bolstered by a newfound determination. "I can't let this go on." The storm had gathered enough energy, and it was time to dispel it. I quickly pulled out my laptop and began drafting an email to the local news stations, outlining my role in the exposé. I would confess my actions and explain the motivations that had driven me to this point. I needed to own my mistakes, to take accountability for my thirst for vengeance. As my fingers danced over the keyboard, I felt a weight lift. I was scared, vulnerable, and uncertain about the consequences of my admission, but I knew I had to step into the light. The truth would set me free, allowing me to reclaim my identity and dismantle the chaos I had sown. When I hit send, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. While I couldn't undo the damage I had caused, I could choose a different path, a path of healing and redemption. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find a way to reclaim my dignity without tearing others down in the process. The rain began to subside, and I felt a quiet resolve settle within me. Maybe Kyle would learn something from this too. Maybe he would understand the fear of losing something precious. I glanced at the window, watching the last remnants of the storm fade into the distance. The aftermath of my actions would surely leave scars, but I hoped that in taking responsibility, I could begin to heal, not just for myself, but for Kyle as well. As I looked at my roommates, I felt a renewed sense of purpose rising within me. I didn't have to be a victim or a villain. I could be someone who chooses empathy, compassion, and, ultimately, forgiveness. And with that realization, I understood that the most powerful form of revenge is not to tear someone down, but to rise above and reclaim who you truly are. Perhaps the greatest victory is found not in revenge, but in the courage to rise from the ashes of our misdeeds and strive to be better. In my heart, I knew I was ready to embark on a new journey, a journey toward redemption, where the true essence of my character could shine through the storm.